No. Bonjour Mes Amis, we meet once again. Spoilers ahead and a verbal disclaimer that all content warnings from the game apply here. Now we're on Verso speedy train today, so we're going full speed ahead. Unlike the last two where I was undershooting for time, I'm worried I don't have enough today. And I am running a bit late in uploading this, so apologies for that. Um, I also have made especially sure to tie a double knot on my tie and mask, as what I'm about to say will offend the fandom. And before you spam the comments, do hear me out. Just picture for a moment, what if Verso's ending is fake? Let me dare ask, what do the red and white petals floating in the Verso ending mean? I'll try to reframe this statement more logically in this video. This isn't rage bait, clickbait, or fishing bait. This is level -2 of our descent into madness. Which ending did you choose? This is where most people are stuck emotionally. It seems like there is somewhat of an even split. There is a choice between Verso's ending and Maelle's ending. Both endings are equally valid and part of the experience provided by the developers themselves. But both sides are too busy convincing one another which is the good ending, the justified ending, or even the canon ending. You're all wrong. This level is about the hidden ending, which only 3.3% of players have achieved. The Francois ending. If you haven't already, go check out Carbot Animations. It is the creme de la creme of a summary and captures the vibe of the game perfectly. I have to say, it's absolutely cinema. More seriously, we shouldn't be fighting over endings. The creators themselves have pointed out our experiences define how we relate to the characters and ultimately choose our own ending. We don't have to be like the guys telling Uno they don't know how to play their own game. It's a French JRPG. None of the endings created are good endings. The game breaks the fourth wall completely. It's a game about trauma. All the characters in the game have trauma. And the devs thought it would be a funny joke to also make us suffer trauma, which is why they created two endings, both intended with the purpose of fully traumatizing us. I love the thought process from Professor Curie, who identified the endings as a trolley problem. You are running someone over either way. It's just your choice, your personal bias that affects which way you pull the lever. If you haven't come across this premise before, it's a philosophical question. If you are standing by a lever that switches between two train tracks, both with people tied to the tracks, which way would you pull the lever if the train is seconds away from the switchover point? Make no mistake, there is no correct answer to the trolley problem. The problem just serves to showcase how different emotions and factors affect your decision. You might have heard, what if there's a single person on one track that is a loved one, friend, or someone who will save humanity? And on the other track you have a group of criminals or old people. So you can't really judge the person who pulls the lever because you don't understand the circumstances which led them to that choice. But I digress. The reason I point to the trolley problem is due to the fact that most people take the painted world as being fake or not as important as the real world, and that is what they are thinking before running the world under the train and choosing Verso's ending. You can watch my last video, which was all about the people inside the canvas and how the game shows they are alive. But continuing from that, those who chose Verso's ending reference the fact that the whole of Lumiere was gommaged, so they are dead anyway. This is not too dissimilar to the Thanos snap, but those same people cheered when the Avengers brought the snap people back to life. Why not cheer for the Lemurians in the same way? Would these people have chosen a cinematic Marvel ending where Thanos won the war and erased half the universe? Marvel could just continuously make movies in another universe. They have an entire multiverse to play with. But why does the viewer care about the universe the film is based on? My point here loops back to my previous video in one word: perspective, which is very, very important for both endings. When you reach the ending options, you aren't just choosing which ending you want, but whose perspective you want to see the ending from. You are choosing who you want to narrate the rest of the game and get to participate in the Duel of Fates. I meant the duel which decides the rest of the fate. The duel which decides the fate of the canvas. I confused myself there. It's not Alicia you choose Maelle, because the fight here is between Maelle and Verso. Either Maelle wins and gets to live, or Verso wins and kills Maelle. Notice I'm saying Maelle and not Alicia, because I don't believe they're the same. And did I make it look like it's only Verso I'm picking on? It's just his turn first. Maelle is also on the train track today. It is somewhat blurry as to who Maelle is. She doesn't have a faceless face that looks like a painter, even when using painter's powers. Also, when Maelle gommages at the harbour, her whole body disappears off screen. There is no one left. From my perspective on souls, at this point the soul of Maelle is lost. But we then go on to see Maelle meet up with Verso, who is sitting on a bench, before Renoir rocks up and the game chooses the flee option on your behalf. As they say, choose your battles. This isn't for today. I would go into why the Maelle ending is a disaster later, though, and how I believe those revived are not the same souls or the same people as they initially were. Now, to steer back to Verso first, let me remind you of this dialogue. Just before Verso decides to delete the canvas, he tries to gaslight Maelle. Thankfully, Maelle has her head screwed on straight and doesn't succumb to Verso's lies. Why am I showing you this? In case you haven't noticed, the one character you cannot trust in this game is Verso. Anything that comes out of his mouth is 100% guaranteed to be either a lie or twisted truth. Hell, 2 minutes ago, he promised Lune he would help revive everyone from Lumiere. Also, fun fact, Verso is the narrator in the game trailers, which is especially important when you recall Act 2 is called Verso. He let Gustav die so he could steer the story in the direction he wanted. Let that sink in. Would you trust the narration of a liar? If you didn't notice in the excitement, let me remind you that he was the only one present when he asked the young boy if he was tired of painting. It's deceptive, from the way the question is framed to how the boy nods his head. You might remember that you communicate to remnants of the young boy across the continent with words, and yet here, in this important moment, he chooses to nod his head instead of, talk, for the single most important decision he could make. The framing is deceptive, as in the back you see Maelle walk in, but interestingly, she just got there after Verso received the response. She didn't even notice the boy at first. As you can see, she says, "Oh, that's just like when you go to the office and your colleague is blocking your view from the manager, standing behind them. Only to move slightly and you see your manager, cursing your colleague. Imagine if you badmouthed your boss there, right?" So let's not derail the train. I'm going back now to Verso's ending. You will see the same red and white petals that fall in Lumiere because of the red and white tree. Notice you will only see trees with green or brown leaves in the background, and not a single green or brown leaf can be seen falling from the sky. Whilst you are watching the leaves, let me ask if you have seen the Maelle ending. Did you notice the framing is from Maelle's point of view? Only the humans of Lumiere are shown, and everyone seemed happy, which is what Maelle wants. So it would be very logical for Verso's ending to be from his point of view. Also, before you go into the scene of the outside world after picking Verso's ending, you see painted Verso and the young boy Gommage. This should be impossible. We saw until moments ago, painted Verso was giving off white petals and surviving in a place he theoretically shouldn't be in. How did he all of a sudden Gommage, and why are there red petals? Did his immortality have an expiration date, or did Renoir sneak back into the canvas just to erase him? Also, we don't see the canvas world being destroyed either. The screen just cuts straight to black. Something else about the Verso ending. His grave is alone, not with his grandparents or ancestors. You would imagine that the painters would have their own graveyard, especially with the so-called war going on, and that too in the backyard of their own house. That's not somewhere you would bury someone, especially as Renoir wants more than anything for the whole family to move on. Also, another thing to notice is the hallucination of people from within the canvas Alicia sees. Interestingly, Monoko and Esquier fade into ink into the scene, but just moments ago, when Verso made the choice, they entered that in-between space. They gommage into red petals inside the canvas. Now, Gustav seems to be beckoning Maelle over, which could allude to why painted Verso let Act 1 end in that way. And painted Verso in this scene turns into white petals symbolizing life, which could be a nod to the real Verso still being alive. The whole ending seems like a lie being told by painted Verso. Now, if someone did do a lie counter, it would be too high to trust anything Verso says or does. I mean, even his father portrayed real Verso's Axon as someone who wears masks and lies, so To be fair, I'm not the only one who thinks like this. Hopefully you can see this theory from full meta-analysis, which notices how the Verso ending is too happy, to the extent that it seems forced, and there is a song lyric somewhere that Verso dreams, or something along those lines, which suggests that Verso could be dreaming the end we see on screen. And that is not the actual outside world. That is a very rudimentary explanation from me, but I will be playing the clip so you can see what I'm talking about. It does make sense for this to be his ideal result from his own sacrifice. He wants to make himself be the hero in his final moments. Some other observations from the Verso ending are, if you are counting the flower pots, there were 4 next to his grave, 1 in each corner, which makes sense when you think there's 4 members of the descendant family there, but then Claire brings another one, which total the pots to 5. Now, if you could do the maths, where does the extra one come from? Unless it is a nod from Painted Verso that the last segment of his soul has also been laid to rest. Talking about flower pots, they are all red and white flowers. Which is interesting, right? So moving away from flowers, Renoir is wearing his wedding ring, but I don't think Aline is. The biggest detail you might have missed also has to do with Renoir. His hair, it has colour, and it looks a lot younger than when you run into Renoir inside the manor, when you wake up as Alicia after the whole of Lumiere has gommaged and you talk to Claire. Maybe this is the ideal as Verso remembered Renoir, which is why his appearance is like it used to be when he was a lot younger. Claire also seems more calm in this scene, not like someone who has been to war. Now, another thing I've noticed is the clip is noticeably kept short, just like a dream would be. I'm pretty sure Maelle's ending is a bit longer than this sequence, and I've realized as I'm speaking that I'm working through this ending backwards. So the next part will be just after the battle with Maelle in Verso's success. You fight as Verso and you've just defeated Maelle. Now, without her bleeding, being injured, or you're landing a final blow, you see her start to gommage and disappear. This is interesting, as it just seems like Verso wore Maelle down and then she gommaged without reason. You don't see any injuries, you don't see any final moves. I almost thought Painted Verso was powerful enough here just to look at Maelle and gommage her. As you see her survive perfectly fine earlier when she was speaking to Verso, which would be terrifying if true, as from what we see, normally the person either chooses to self-gommage, like what Renoir does when he says he will keep the lights on, or another painted as a palm thing where they force gommage you, and it doesn't look like what's happening here. But then you remember this is the Verso ending, and Verso wouldn't want to paint himself as the villain, so can you trust anything you see at this point? But then you see Monaco and Esquier. In this sequence, they turn into petals instead of ink. Ciel also comes into this place and gommages, but you see Lune sit down in defiance. Though interestingly, you don't see her gommage, and this is the part where Painted Verso and Young Verso gommage. Now, let's make an hypothesis. Let's assume that no one can survive in this space where we have the final battle, which is why Ciel, Monaco, and even Esquier the Powerful die when they enter this space. And maybe Maelle could only delay the inevitable, because after some time, she also dies. Maybe she extended her stay as Verso let her be inside this space, or she's a hybrid because she's born within the canvas as her own thing in the form of Maelle, and not Alicia as a paintress with a body created inside the canvas by her own doing. So whatever the reason, which we don't really know, it would be pure speculation at this point. More importantly, the objective of Renoir, Claire, and Painted Verso seem to be the same: to get young boy to stop painting. Now, here you can see Painted Verso was about to stop the young boy from painting, whilst Maelle is still inside the canvas, but is stopped by Maelle. Now, why would Renoir or Claire not come inside here and do the same? Perhaps, now this is a reach, but this is a theory, it is impossible for them to enter this space. Maybe they would gommage after entering this space like how Maelle does after the battle, which, if true, raises the question, did Renoir know painted Verso could enter this space and somehow survive? Also, this bit links into my previous video, but doesn't it seem like the painters can't control or manipulate souls? So even if they were able to make it inside this space, maybe they can't interact with the boy or get him to stop painting. So could this whole thing have been part of Renoir's plan? Backtracking a bit more, how did we enter this in-between space between worlds? Renoir left this portal thing open after he gommaged, and painted Verso decided to jump in. And why would Renoir keep the portal open? When you jump into the space as painted Verso, you don't see the image of Aline on the other side, which is the whole reason he jumped into this thing. It's a closed space with only one exit back from where you came. You just see the little boy painting. It almost seems too coincidental that painted Verso was allowed to jump inside. A few more details about this I observed are the slash, that same X shape that shows when you break the barrier to the monolith as Maelle. Could Renoir just be cutting through an illusion? Why do I say illusion? What we see is exactly the same as the portals we use on the world map to go into a set location. This doesn't seem like something special to see into the outside world. Another pre-established fact is there is a time difference between the painted canvas world and the outside world, which is not 1-to-1. So how is Aline moving in real time? She should be moving in extreme slow motion unless it is an illusion. Especially so because this is done by Renoir, the same painter who made the Serene Axon, who is also a professional at making illusions. So it would not be a reach to say Renoir is also a professional at charm and illusions. In fact, this very ability could be the reason why my Aline questions Expedition 33, as Renoir could have tried to trick her, showing Verso in the outside world in need of her. The character we see as Aline doesn't really speak, so it could be a puppet for all we know, moving on a script or on a set motion. Also, if you notice where Aline is standing, it's back where you, as Alicia, see Clair in the real-world manner when she wakes up after the gommage. They then move the canvas to a darker place with candles. However, in this illusion, we are back to the same spot. Why would Aline bring the canvas back to this spot instead of just jumping in as quickly as possible? The most important observation is you don't see real-world Renoir in the illusion, when he, in the real world, was standing right next to Aline, which you can see from the eyes of Maelle in the scene where she's speaking to real-world Clair. Now, going on a slight tangent, what if Aline isn't really sick? Maybe Renoir tries to make it a lot more dramatic than it really is. As in the real world, we hear from Clair's mouth, they have both been in canvases for far longer, and the situation isn't really that dire, which could mean Renoir is dressing up the situation to emotionally manipulate painted Verso into doing something he wants from him. I think that's enough for Verso's ending for now. Whilst we are exploring tangents, let's talk about petals and what they mean. Considering where this conversation started, red and white flowers falling from the sky in Verso's ending, Professor Fury did a video about chroma which I highly recommend, but of course I have my own opinions on the matter. I believe the colour of the petals aren't necessarily tied to the chroma of the person painting, but more so the emotions in their heart as they paint, and are kind of like indicators as to what their goal is. A good place to start is to say they are not only red and white petals. We see purple petals by the Serene Axon, which I believe represent the power of illusions. The goal is to deceive the viewer. Why do I say deceive the viewer? It is because the illusions serve to entrap the viewer in a dream of something they cannot attain. They see their deepest regrets. For example, Ciel sees her husband, Pierre, and her unborn baby girl. Quick tangent, not sure if this is the song playing in Verso's ending, but this is the lyric. Verso dreams once more. I'm taking screenshots from the same video, which is why it's not earlier. And did I mention I'm not great with tech? But there are several other song lyrics which basically explain different colors. So, red is stated as life taken, so red petals must symbolize death. Black is his sad eyes, so black petals must symbolize sadness. Through gold, his laughter persists, so this could symbolize either happiness or hope, which leaves white, though it isn't said via song lyrics that I found. Um, it is mentioned in Alicia's letter. Your mother paints life, whilst your father death. Thanks to Civilization X for creating a visual for it. It also shows that Alicia hoped her brother would change, not take the cowardly path, but to fight for a third ending. We see black petals when we face Simon. His second form is called upon using black petals. There might be other instances in the game of it, but with my eyes, I wasn't able to catch other scenes. It doesn't help that the ink bleed animations are also in black, and the lighting can make a huge difference. Next, our first run into gold petals, bar the woman you see around the continent, are from the sword the curator makes to break the chroma barrier around the monolith. It makes sense for this sword to be charged with the emotion to bring Aline joy, to make her smile again, or the hope she moves past the mental block of Verso's death. Do note this is before Maelle remembers she has painter's powers, so this should be all Renoir's or the curator's painting powers acting up at the moment. What is interesting is the mix of red and gold petals when you first come across the painter's axon. This is interesting because it isn't clear who the petals are coming from. The red petals might be from Renoir under the monolith, but then where did the gold petals come from? Is it Renoir and his hope to make Aline happy, or is it Aline, in the case where we do not know what she is doing in the background? What could she be doing that believes the emotion of either happiness or hope? She isn't with painted Verso either, but I digress. We also see golden petals covering the floor once we enter the monolith. Again, what magic was done, for the lack of a better word, to create all these golden petals? I have the feeling it means something, but I can't figure out what the developers are trying to hint here, unless my understanding of the color is wrong. Maybe it represents different or even multiple emotions. Now here is something I missed in my first playthrough, but Maelle mentions she can sense the heart of the paintress. Now is this the same person we saw inside the manor when we fought painted Renoir in Old Lumiere, or is this just the essence? The same essence. So Maelle assumes it's the same person. As Claire says, Renoir is trapped under the monolith and Aline above. If she is trapped above the monolith, it only makes sense if the chroma barrier around the monolith was set up by Renoir to trap her there and not play make-believe with a painted family, which is why the curator was the only one to find a way to break it, and why Simon, with Claire's influence, who is Renoir's ally, was able to make his way through. But if she can appear outside, that means she is more powerful than Renoir imagines. But why does she end up defeated? I'll cover this in a much later video, but still, something about Aline doesn't add up. Now back to topic, my last remark on petal colors. At the place where Gustav is buried, you see a tree with red and gold leaves. This might symbolize that even in death, Gustav has left hope for the ones left behind, or should I say, hope for those who come after. Quickly and briskly moving now to Maelle's ending. I mean, if I'm offending people anyway, I should go all the way. Parry the haters. Now I need a shirt which says that. But let's try and set this ending up more chronologically and ordered than the butchering I probably did of Verso's one. Now, whilst the argument of perspective is still fresh in your mind, just as is the case for Verso's ending, where the narrator is Verso, Maelle's ending is told through Maelle's biased eyes. There is a song lyric which could mention from Claire's perspective that Maelle is a Tyrantess. Now this could be based off a hidden trait Claire observed from younger Alicia, but often others see things in you that you might yourself not see, and painting is a very powerful tool. Knowingly or unknowingly, Alicia might be manipulating everything around her or seeing things as she wants. Verso does quote to her, "See things as they are, not how you want them to be," in the ending sequence. So let's go back a bit in time. When we go to Serene's island, Maelle says she finds the dance familiar, and when Verso plays the piano at camp, she also feels like it's deja vu. Words. At this point, Verso mentions he played this for his younger sister. but that's an Easter egg. You wouldn't know what that means until you did a second playthrough. But my point here is, her memories are being suppressed. She has dreams or nightmares and can sense familiarity with things from her suppressed memory, but she can't fully recall them. Now, if Aline was the one who suppressed her memory, why does the spell not wear out once the paintress is defeated? Aline whispers Alicia after you dispatch her, and Maelle's eyes go all black. That isn't normal either. What does it mean? I think this is Aline transferring some power to Maelle, as obviously it's not her returning her memories, and her eyes will not go black for no reason, but I'm unsure. What do you think? Leave your comments below, because I am human after all. I make mistakes too. One I've just noticed is in the last video I mixed up the painter's accent with the paintress during the mental flame scene, but hopefully it still got the point across. Now back at camp, after running away from Renoir, Maelle assumes Renoir isn't chasing them anymore, as he is tired. Notice how she says probably. Again, the game presents Maelle's perspective as fact, but it's only what Maelle assumes and not necessarily the truth. This links into my previous point that Renoir is setting up the game for Painted Verso to enter the in-between. Whilst I'm on a walk anyway, Maelle mentions 2 Lumieres. This does not make sense. She already says 2 childhoods and 2 homes, unless the outside world Paris is also called Lumiere. Maybe I missed something. Do let me know. Now let's jump right into Maelle's ending. To start off with, one last message for the people who chose Verso's ending after seeing Maelle's one, saying it's cruel to keep someone who doesn't want to live alive. Now they are selectively applying the word alive, because if you believe Painted Verso is alive and deserves to be put to rest, you then can't deny everyone else as being alive in the world, because he is created the same as everyone else. You can't pick and choose and decide who you want to be considered alive. It doesn't work like that. But the reason I'm saying this is it comes down to what emotions you as the viewer attach to the characters, and some people might resonate with Verso more. It doesn't make it wrong, it's just perspective. Having said that, I'm showing Gustav's lines which reinforce the finality of death. I also want to reference my previous video about souls and how painters don't understand them and can't manipulate them. Soul only lives once. So my belief is the people Maelle revives are duplicates with the memories, but not the same soul. Let's start with Lune and Ciel. Lune, who has never been physical before, even when under heated arguments with Gustav, pushes Verso, standing close to a cliff after being revived. The characters are not really emotional when they see Renoir. Ciel or Lune don't attack him as they did with the paintress, they just stand by and talk. Lune is also a smart character, so if Maelle was able to figure out Verso let Gustav die, you can bet your horses Lune also figured it out. She was the most vocal about not trusting Verso from the beginning. At the end, why does she still trust Verso? Also, Lune isn't the one to ask about reviving the rest of Lumiere. Her life's mission was to save Lumiere, which is why she was working her ass off and wanted to make her parents proud. But why is it that Ciel is the one that asks the questions, and that too only because she is suddenly selfish? She wants Pierre to be revived, but if you remember a few slides back, her hidden desire was to see Pierre holding her baby, so why not have the baby revived too? Unless it's impossible for Maelle to revive the baby, which puts the limitation on revival to people she has seen, and hence read the chroma of, like how Renoir knows Ciel grieves for 2. It's almost like their personalities got mirrored, which is interesting considering the canvas is a mirror to the real world, but that's content for a different video. Ciel is also shown wearing matching clothes with Lune and Maelle, which, come on, have you seen Ciel's fashion sense? Sorry, words elude me at this point of time. It is mentioned in one of the creator interviews that Ciel wants to showcase a scar as a reminder. Moving on to other people, we see Gustav enter the scene. However, he has a mechanical arm. It would be one hell of a twisted joke for Maelle to revive Gustav back and not give him his arm back intact, unless the way her memory of chroma works means if she wants to revive him with his memories, she has to also copy the physical traits across two, which include his missing arm. Something else about Maelle's ending is something Black Coffee pointed out, which is Verso's scar is missing from his face in this ending, which basically was Verso's way of acknowledging his feud with Painted Renoir. It's mentioned during a dialogue at camp with Ciel. Also, notice how Verso is the only one who has aged. Everyone else in your team looks exactly the same, age and appearance wise, as they were at the end before you made the choice. Now, we also see a kid who a lot speculate is Verso and Luna's child, but I say our, Gustav's apprentices, who are also children, are not seen in this scene. Also, Emma is also missing, who should be like a mother to Maelle. It is interesting to see why they are not here in this scene, considering they should also be important people to Maelle. Now, going on a bit of a tangent at this point, I did find Master Sam's take interesting. How Alicia looks smug after gommaging painted copy Alicia. She wants to be the only sister alive to Verso. She's learned to be manipulative, perhaps from the best, probably also saying others can't be painted over as a lie. Maybe she has started to become twisted, enjoying her newfound powers. She doesn't grieve, she doesn't shed tears, or she doesn't look sad when painted Alicia is gommaged. Also, instead of letting the dead rest, Maelle digs up the chroma sitting in the bodies of the expeditioners killed by Nevrons, and they don't get revived. The moment Maelle woke up as Alicia, perhaps her sympathy for Lumiere humans has ended, so she now sees them as a mere resource and a tool to feel important and powerful. All that neglect from the Descender family makes her want to put herself on a pedestal. Going back to Maelle's ending, we don't see Aline coming to visit the canvas. Now, as the strongest painter, there is nothing stopping her from doing so. If she was as obsessed with the canvas as Renoir and the Descender family indicate, if nothing they did stopped her before, what is stopping her now? And finally, we see Verso steal the POV from Maelle at the end, where the world fades to black and white, and we see Maelle's eyes go weird. Now, this weird eye thing only happens when a painter is painting. We see Claire in the real world before she speaks to us having the same eyes, and Aline and Renoir's real bodies with the same thing around their eyes when they're trapped inside the canvas. So it's not the faceless thing which happens from supposed long exposure to the canvas, the state you see Aline and Renoir in during the final sequence, but it's something different. And I think that's a good place to wrap this video up. It's basically all about perspective, and both endings have flaws, so there is no good ending as such.